If I were the head of GTM at Ashby, here's exactly how I'd break into tier 1 accounts like Webflow and Alteryx. Step 1 is I do a closed won analysis. In this case, we've done a logo analysis of all of their customers that we could find online. Step 2 is I would define ICP and tiering on an account level and a persona level based on all of the data that we could find. And step 3 is I'd look at my existing customer network to identify the lowest hanging fruit, so the warmest paths into target accounts. And then step 4 is I would leverage that data using 2 playbooks to book warm meetings. So the first playbook is I would get my CSMs and AMs to reach out to customers directly at times of peak satisfaction, asking for warm intros. And the other playbook is I would get my BDRs and AEs to cold call prospects, name dropping our shared contact, so our existing customer, the problem they faced, how we help them solve it, and whether they'd experienced something similar now or in the past. Okay, it's like we're calling a friend of a friend rather than a cold approach. So without further ado, let's dive into the video. Right, so we're on Ashby's website. They are an applicant tracking system for companies. What sort of companies? Well, that's something we're going to find out with the logo analysis. So we've got a whole bunch of logos here. We've also got their customer page where we've got a whole bunch of customer stories, testimonials, and things like that. So we've got a bunch of logos. We can jot those down in here, find their website. Should we include them? Should we not include them? And then filter out all of the do not includes. Maybe there's not enough evidence that they're actually a customer. We want to have a high confidence in the data we're using. So what we can do is we can export that file. We can upload it into Freckle as a CSV, and we get something like this. And you can see here that we've filtered out all of the do not include, so include only. And we have enriched with company data. So things like city, country, industry, founded year, all this data that we've got access to, employee count, short description. And we've also enriched with the size of the talent team. So when you're selling into mid-markets and enterprise, a big part of it is figuring out where they are on the maturity curve compared to other businesses. Are they behind? Are they on track? Or are they ahead? And depending on where they're at, determines what tier they are, the messaging, whether you want to reach out to them or not, right? So how important that account is. So we have extracted all of the people in the talent team for these companies. And what we've then done is we've exported this file. We've thrown it into Claude and said, Claude, I want you to do a AI QA. So are the employee numbers correct? Are the countries and cities correct? How does the talent team to employee ratio look? And then we're going to QA, and we're going to then manually go through as well to make sure this data is right. Because again, this is underpinning our analysis. So we've done that. We've added that to this file here. So enriched logos. It's been QA'd by AI and by human. We're happy with it. And then what we can do is we can feed that into Claude again to do a logo analysis. We can do the logo analysis on a global level. Okay, so across all accounts, what's the split by segments? So SMB, commercial, mid-market, small enterprise, large enterprise. What's the talent team distribution? What are the different industries, countries, and things like that. But then what we want to remember is actually like we're going to have SMB reps, probably not SMB reps, but we're going to have segment reps. So commercial reps, mid-market reps, enterprise reps. And so everything at the tiering and everything's going to look slightly different for different segments. So we don't actually want to apply global across the segments. We want to have segment specific as well. So here we've broken down by SMB, 3 accounts, number of employees, talent team size, industry breakdown, country, city. Same for commercial, same for mid-market, same for small enterprise. And then we don't actually have any large enterprise accounts. So we can kind of remove those. Okay, so what have we done then? Well, we've actually done a persona analysis. So we've taken all of the personas that we could find that are customers and broken down what are their titles so we can figure out who we should be targeting. Because yeah, it's talent software. We can just say, let's target head of talent. But actually, like, who are the customers? That's the biggest sign. So we've broken down and it looks like talent leadership, talent acquisition leadership. We've got people leadership. We've got recruiters, so like senior principal recruiters. But again, they're probably not going to be decision makers. So even though there's maybe some happy users, they might fall down the tiering for persona. Couldn't actually find any HR in there. Couple of CTOs, CEOs. So yeah, from there, we've got an idea of the sort of personas. Then what we've done is we've actually broken down talent team maturity, okay? So for the different segments, what's the typical median number of talent people? And what's that as a percentage of headcount? So, you can see for commercial around 2.5% of headcount, for mid-market 1.6, small enterprise 1.6, and large enterprise we can kind of ignore. This has all been extrapolated because we don't have any accounts in large enterprise. And then we can come up with a type band. So where do like the majority sit, like 50%, 60% for each segment? And then we can have a wider band, okay? So where do say 75% sit? And so we have an idea of, okay, if we're targeting commercial mid-market, what sort of size the talent team should be for us to win them as a customer, okay? And then from there, we can actually define account tiering. So based on the logo analysis, 82% of the accounts are North America, so US, Canada, 8% are UK and I, and then secondary, we've got a few in Germany, a couple in France, and a couple in Holland as well. So they're secondary markets. In terms of segments, SMB is really too small to have SMB reps, and large enterprise, we don't actually have any accounts. So it makes sense to focus on commercial, mid-market, and small enterprise. In terms of A and B lists, so a tier 1A account versus a tier 1B account, okay? Well, we want to put some weight towards certain industries because we might have more customers in those industries. So if we have a look at logo analysis for the global level, we can see that 61% are IT and services, okay? And we've got, 9% in financial, 4% in insurance. So okay, IT and tech and software is coming out pretty good. Let's see what it looks like for commercial. Okay, 63% in IT and services, 11% in financial services. Let's have a look at mid-market. We've got 53% in IT and services, insurance coming out on top again, financial services as well. So we're seeing a bit of a pattern here. IT and services, financial services. So for the account tiering, we really want to prioritize, first of all, tech and software businesses. So tier 1A, tier 2A. Okay, what's next? Well, financial services, insurance, and some professional services as well was coming out as the next level of priority. So they could be tier 1B, tier 2B, and then C list is everyone else, okay? Now we actually want to just define what is a tier 1, a tier 2 versus a tier 3. So the first thing I'm going to say is there's a lot of noise online about signals, but when you're building an outbound motion, you don't need all of these complex signal stacks. It makes everything too complicated. It's come from the cold email industry. They're not really targeting 20k ACV and above. It's kind of irrelevant. When you're a tech company, you need something simple that's effective that reps can use as a guideline to tier accounts so they know, okay, this is a good account. We've got a good chance with this account. So we have defined tier 3 as everyone else. So that's kind of the universe. Tier 2 layered on top of that is on-track maturity. So the talent team is within 50% of the typical percentage of headcount, okay? So what that means is if we go to talent maturity, are we floating around that 2.5% of headcount for the talent team? And if so, we've kind of got a nice on-track talent team maturity, okay? Tier 1 is actually, are we well below that number? Because if we are, chances are that the talent team's quite under-resourced and could probably do with some help to bring some structure, bring some organization, and to be able to make more out of their existing talent team. Okay, and the other thing I forgot to mention as well for tier 2 is we're either doing on-track maturity or there's been some form of rapid growth signal. Because if they're rapidly growing, chances are they've got a lot of open job roles out there and there's a lot of people they need to track. What we don't want to do is measure open job roles because that is very relative to headcount. And again, we're bringing in more complexity. The rate of growth is the best kind of signal of how many people they're adding into the org, how overutilized, underutilized their talent team are, okay? So then what we can do is based on those talent team maturity levels, we can define tiering for commercial, mid-market, and small enterprise, okay? And then finally for persona tiering, we have based it off the persona analysis. So tier 1, talent and talent acquisition leadership, people leadership. Tier 2, we have actually included HR leadership because even though we don't have any customers there, if we have a CHRO, but we don't have a people leader or we don't have a talent leader, and we get them on the phone and we book a meeting with them, that's still a very high quality meeting and chances are they're going to have some level of interest. So that's why it's a tier 2. We've got senior recruiters in tier 2 as well. And then for tier 3, we've got more the recruiting managers, the talent recruiting ops. They're not going to count as a sales accepted opportunity, an SAO, but they might be someone that's good to get the foot in the door with to penetrate into a tier 1 or tier 2 persona. So we've got all of the the account tiering, the persona tiering based off real data. What do we want to do now? Well, we are going to head into Cluster, and we have taken 15 of Ashby's top customers and load them into Cluster. Now, Cluster will analyze those customers' network to identify who they know at target accounts that we can then ask for warm intros with or try other playbooks, which we'll get into. So let me show you some examples. So Kiara Moore, who is a head of global talent operations strategy at Confluent, a Ashby customer, and she's a happy customer. She knows Mike, who is the senior vice president of people at Webflow, okay? And how do they know each other? Well, if we dig into here, we can see that Mike and Kiara have engaged with each other on each other's posts. There's a high level of closeness. So Cluster will actually use AI to look at the sentiment, as well as the freshness, as well as the frequency of interactions. It will also look at, okay, have these people worked together in the past? Okay, they've worked together at both Medallia and Confluent. They were in the same location during the overlap. And even though it's heavily penalized on role alignment, actually, there is some role alignment. They were both either in people or talent, and they're very kind of high vicinity departments. So they would have most likely known each other as well there. And we can see from all of these interactions that they do know each other really, really well. So really strong relationship there. We've also got Alteryx down here. So another customer, Amanda Yates, global head of talent acquisition at Boomi, another happy customer. She knows Jill Bone, chief people officer at Alteryx. And if we look into the data, Jill, who is our prospect, actually endorsed our happy customer, Amanda Yates. Okay, they've exchanged engagement on LinkedIn. They worked together at Alteryx for 18 months. Okay, and again, they had some level of vicinity, talent, and people teams being close together. Okay. So overall, we've got 267 warm intros. This is, by the way, has been filtered down to the highest quality intros to companies that are 50 employees and above. So there are loads more, but we filtered down to the quality warm intros. And if we scroll down, we've got intros into Google Ventures, Optro, AdSwerve. Look, we can see the employee count over here. We've got Horizon, Runway, Talentful. We've got Medallia, General Motors. We've got OpenAI. We've got Liquid AI, a whole bunch of Lightspeed, a whole bunch more companies, Asana. And so how do we then leverage this data to break into accounts like Webflow and Alteryx? Well, let's have a look at the different use cases. So the first use case is the AM CSM use case, okay? We could go to Kiara, happy customer, and say, Kiara, you are happy with Ashby. You're a big fan. Would you be happy to give us an intro to Mike? And Cluster sees on average a 40% conversion rate from warm request to meeting booked as an average across their customer base. Okay, that's the first use case. And we'll talk about the timing of that in a second. So that's the first use case. And then the second use case is the sales BDR AE use case. So here's another example. This was the Jill example. So we can, instead of going to the happy customer, Amanda, we can go straight to Jill and we can call Jill up. And we can basically make it feel like we're calling a friend of a friend. Oh, hey, Jill, we work with Amanda Yates. We've helped them with this challenge that they had over at Boomi. They were kind of facing X, Y, and Z. It was having this sort of impact. I was just curious, is this something you've seen at all over at Alteryx or is it a different story? Okay, that's more of a colder type approach, but you could also like change the messaging as well. But there's a lot of power in mentioning and name dropping people or companies that are familiar, because it puts people into system 2 thinking. And I know from experience as a cold caller that I'm getting more conversations and I'm getting more meetings booked from having that familiarity. Okay, so 2 really good use cases. So let's go back to the AM CSM use case. How can we time this so that we're doing it at the right time? The AM CSM is reaching out at the right time. So we have a diagram here, okay? So if we look at Ashby and their flow, maybe the user has just hired their first successful candidate through Ashby. That is an important moment in their journey of using Ashby. So the AM CSM can get notified in Slack, okay? The AM CSM can then go out and congratulate that user, and they can ask for feedback. How are you finding everything so far? And is there anyone you'd be happy to give us an intro with? And we could then suggest the name, okay? Like we had over in use cases. Now, did we book a meeting from that? Yes, okay, we can stop there. If no, well, actually, we can notify our BDR AE in Slack, and then the rep can reach out to the prospect name dropping the users, the shared contact, their success with the product, and how they're currently dealing with hiring candidates at the moment at the company. Okay. And I'm just going to show you some messaging examples now for the BDR and AE use case. So if we wanted to break into Webflow, okay, so that was Kiara to Mike. Okay. Well, I know that Kiara's challenge was around candidate fraud. Okay, because I've done my research. And so how do we then really tailor the messaging? And I'll show you what I would do cold calling. Hi, Mike, this is Joe calling from Ashby. Appreciate you weren't expecting the call. I just wondered if you had a brief moment. Cool. So now I'm going to show you the two different openers. I'm going to show you my one. I'm going to show you an alternative. So my one is straight to business. Cool. So look, before coming to us, a lady called Kiara Moore from Confluent. I'm not stating that those two know each other. I'm just saying a lady called Kiara Moore. They're going to recognize, oh, we know Kiara. Things are going to be going off in their head and they're going to start to listen to what we have to say. And they're going to be like, how does this person know Kiara? Kiara Moore from Confluent faced a challenge around candidate fraud, okay? She didn't have the data to identify who were legitimate versus fraudulent candidates. And then downstream of this, it was having an impact on the talent team's ability to do their job. So I was just curious, how are the talent team at Webflow currently addressing candidate fraud? So this open is a little bit more like a bit more of a cold approach, less of a friend of a friend. I'll show you what the friend of a friend alternative looks like. So Mike, hi Mike, this is Joe calling from Ashby, blah, blah, blah. I'm calling because Kiara Moore from Confluent just closed her first recruitment through Ashby. I see you used to work together at Confluence. So I just wondered if what we're solving for her might be a problem at your company as well. Specifically, they didn't have the data to identify who were legitimate versus fraudulent candidates. And then downstream, it was having an impact on the ability for the talent team to do their job effectively. So I was just curious, how's the talent team at Webflow currently addressing candidate fraud? So you can see one's a bit more of a cold style opener with that name drop, one's more of a friend of a friend. So we can play around with a lot of stuff here. Okay. And then we've also got breaking into Alteryx. So Jill, the CPO. So that was the second example down here. Amanda and Jill know each other. So I could say, Jill, hi Jill, this is Joe calling from Ashby. Appreciate you weren't expecting a call. Wondered if you had a brief moment. Cool. So before coming to us, Amanda Yates from Boomi faced a challenge around manual reporting. Again, this was the challenge that Amanda was facing that led her to work with Ashby. So let's actually make this super relevant. Manual reporting. Her team was spending hours every week pulling data for exec meetings, and she still couldn't spot hiring trends early enough to pivot strategy. And so downstream of this, it was holding the talent team back from being seen as a strategic driver. And so I'm just curious, how's the talent team at Alteryx currently handling reporting and hiring analytics? Stop. Let them speak. And from there, you've got two solid conversations. Guess what? If they don't pick up, you keep calling them back until they pick up. I'm telling you now, with these openers, they're going to give you the time of day because this is beating 99% of cold callers. And so we're seeing here that we can turn real customer data into qualified meetings through going to the customer directly or name dropping as a BDR or AE on cold calls. So to summarize, in this video, we have looked at Ashby. We've looked at their logos. We've done an analysis on their logos. We've built their ICP and tiering. Okay. We've then taken some of their top customer champions. We've loaded them into cluster. We've identified warm intros, how we can break into accounts like Webflow, like Alteryx, and many more, OpenAI. And then the different use cases, how we can build a bit of a referral engine that's specific to Ashby, and then some messaging examples BDRs and AEs can use on cold calls to book qualified meetings. And that's a wrap. Any questions, add to the comments. If you want to map and score your customer network to identify warm paths into target accounts, book a demo with Cluster using the link in the description. And if you're a B2B tech company looking to build out your sales motion here in the UK, book a call with Demand House, link in the description as well.